Welcome to another episode of Don't Panic Geocacher. My name is Arjen and I go by Waterfan5 on the geocache.com website. In this episode, I'm going to talk about audio files and how they can be used to make mystery caches and show you some tips and techniques of how to solve and recognize mystery caches that involve those audio files. Audio files provide a great resource to hide geocache information for mystery caches. There's a large number of options, and frankly, compared to some of the other techniques, audio files are not often used compared to some, for example, images and other parts. Part of the reason might be because audio files cannot be hosted on geocaching.com website. So if you want to create one with an audio file, you would have to host it on another site like a Google Drive. That doesn't mean that they're not a great source of detail. Note that although audio files are of course by nature intended to listen to, a lot of the audio files related puzzles actually don't require you to listen to the file at all. Some of course do, but a lot of them don't. And I'm going to go show you a couple of tips and techniques of how puzzles are hidden in audio files, or maybe even in like the sounds related to like a video file. So we'll start simple, and I'll give you some ideas of what can be done with audio files that I've encountered while solving some puzzles. So first of all, the audio itself can simply say the coordinate, right? The audio file could be maybe somewhat hidden, but of course it also make it slightly more complicated. Maybe they're not in the native language of where you're publishing it, but maybe it's a foreign language. Other option is that the audio file could be very lengthy. If you're not hosting it on geocaching.com website, there's really no limit to it, and they're smaller than video files. It's also not as easy to skip through them, so you may have to listen to a lengthy message hidden between songs where maybe individual numbers or the coordinates are stored. Other thing that I've seen is that the audio file gives you instructions and you almost have to play it in real time, like as a field puzzle, where maybe the posted coordinates are the beginning and they give you either walking or driving instructions that you have to follow. You might be able to solve it at home by doing Google Maps, but it might also be that instructions are used to more things that you see while you're out in the field, and so you have to listen to it while you're getting from A to B. And of course, an audio file could also be that you have to listen to it, but it is still some other code. Morse code, of course, is a very popular scenario there, as it was intended for audio, but I've also seen, for example, other techniques used, like the beeping of phones, so the tunes that went for a dial phone. So there is a variety of ways. Note that for most techniques, even for example when there is like a foreign language used or for Morse code, that there will be websites there that can make your life easier and kind of automate the process for you. And I'm going to show you a few of those. Let's listen to the following audio file.
Noord 50 graden 05.211 oost 14 graden 24.544.
So unless you're one of the maybe 20 million people that speak Dutch, it wouldn't necessarily help you, this audio file. You will hear a sound, you might recognize the language, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're able to translate it. As I mentioned, there's actually websites out there that will transcribe it for you. This can also be useful if it's a very lengthy audio file and a lot of text. You can let it play and these websites will simply transcribe it for you in text, and now you later on can search the text and see what you're looking for. So one of those websites is HappyScribe. In HappyScribe, you can simply upload the audio and it will now just convert it into what it is, and it will recognize automatically the language, so you can kind of see the text that come out of it. Of course it might still be in Dutch, and so you may have to use like a Google Translate or something to push it in there, tell it to detect the language, and it will automatically of course translate it now to, for example in my case, English. And now I have the translated coordinates. Let's listen to another file. So I'm using here the web version of Audacity, where this episode is named after, and show you that it can do a lot of things that the installable version can do as well. I won't have to play it all the way long, kind of annoying, the beeping, but you can clearly recognize it as Morse code. And even by loading it in a tool like Audacity or Wavicity, here we can actually see the Morse code as well. So I mentioned earlier you don't always have to listen to it. Well, here you can see dash dot 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 dot. So dash dot is an N, dot 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 is a 5, dash 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 0 0 5, and so on. So this allows you to decode it more, and you can use a reference for Morse code. However, we can even make it easier. So I mentioned for most things there will be a website. So let's take a look at this. I've uploaded here the file to the website using the upload feature, and now I'll press play. And you see the coordinates just appear. So there is nothing really that you have to do manual in this case, especially if the text is longer or complicated. This saves you a lot of time and effort. So you saw me using Vivacity, the web version of Audacity. Audacity is a free installable audio manipulation tool, and for me definitely one of the favorites I used. It's free, open source, so is the web version. It's open source and free, and it allows you to manipulate files, create files, listen to files, analyze files, and thereby helping you solve a lot of puzzles. It's of course not the only tool that can do it, but it's definitely one that I recommend, and so hence the name of this episode. So one of the things with this audio manipulation gives you again a lot of ways to hide the coordinates. In old music albums, there was always the accusation of reversing audio, and some of them actually did. And a tool like Audacity can do that very easily, thereby obscuring the coordinates. You can also manipulate, for example, and making it too soft, so that it's barely audible, too high, so it's outside the hearing range. You can play it too fast or too slow, so that it becomes again very hard to hear, or put the audio in only one of the channels, so that maybe it is overwritten by the other channel. So if you listen to it, you can't really hear it, but if you mute one channel or the other, then you can hear it. So there's a variety of ways. So what I will do is I'll open Audacity this time, and I will show you some of the ways and use some sample of how it can be done. Here is another audio file. Let's listen to it. It's not really understandable, right? So what we can do, however, is select, in this case, this channel, and now choose reverse. Let's listen to it again.
North 55 211 East 1424 544.
Much better, right? So this is reversing. And as I mentioned, this is only one way of doing it. So I can take, for example, select the text again and say, for example, that we want to speed it up. So let's speed it up some percentage, and let's listen to it again. Yeah, very hard to listen to, right? It's you can't decipher the coordinates. But if you take this file and you take this again, and you would go into and change the speed, move it in the other direction. So go slower.
North 55 211 East 1424 544.
So didn't exactly get back to the original because I didn't do the same percentage, but you can see how you can now restore it and make it audible again. So similar way, we can change the pitch, so make it higher and lower, change the speed, also, for example, amplify it. So I could say, well, let's almost make the sound to none. And you see, it almost looks like silence. We can't even visualize it. And if I try to play it, we can see it responding, but there is nothing there, right? However, we can do the opposite. We can say amplify, and now it's all back, and now we can play it again.
North 55211 East, 1424 544.
So these are some ways that you can use Audacity to either create the puzzle or solve the puzzle. So it shouldn't be forgotten that audio files can also be encoded similar like other files. So extra file information, EXIF information, can also be hidden in audio files, so not just in images. And so using tools like Metadata to go, you can extract it. And actually, Vivacity and Audacity can do it as well, so I'm going to show that later. Note that audio images also support steganography, so the ability to manipulate it without it being visible. Minor modifications can be made to audio files that really are not noticeable or consistent or can be easily cut out of it, other than using a similar tool to detract it. So the Future Boy website is one of the websites that is able to do that. So let's take a look. So let's listen to another file.
The coordinate of the geocache is hidden in this file.
Not very helpful, right? But the coordinates are indeed hidden in here. So it already says EXIF data. So using the tool itself, you see there is a metadata option that I can play right here. I need to stop it first. And if I go to metadata, it will show all the information, including the coordinate that is displayed right here. Similar, you can now use online tools. Metadata to go is another one. Uploaded the same file. And if we scroll down, we can find the coordinates right here. So that is another way to just hide the coordinates, similar like you do with images. You can hide it in the extra information. You can also use full code encryption. So here I loaded another file, steganography, and if I play to it, it's actually the same sound that you had before, so you can't really hear it. In this case, I have to provide a password, and if I say submit on this file, you will now see that the decoded text is indeed a coordinate. Very hard for somebody to find. You even have to know the right website, because every website encodes, so without hints, this would almost be impossible to solve. Let's take yet another technique. This one is actually quite popular, and probably because of how unique and how original it is. But I've seen it definitely used on a variety of caches. You have to know a little bit about sound and understand how this works. And this has to do with that every sound kind of has an inverted version of the sound. When you have the inverted version of the sound, which will sound just like the original, they actually wipe each other out. And the total combined sound is actually silence. This is actually how some of the noise reduction tools work. That basically by producing another sound, they kind of wipe out the original sound. Tools like Audacity, we can easily simulate that, and we can do that by having two identical channels in a stereo file that look identical but actually have a very minor difference. If you listen to it, you can't hear it. If you try to individually listen to each of the left and the right, you still can't hear it. It's truly hidden in the differences between the channel. And so what you would have to do is split the channels, the left and the right, invert one of them so it becomes the negative noise, and then merge them back together so that the parts that are equal eliminate each other, and the only thing that's left is the delta. And we can both visually see it, so your puzzle could be a visual puzzle, or we can listen to it and it can be an audible puzzle. So let's take a look. So this is an example of a sound file that has coordinates hidden in there, but they're hidden very soft. So we'll have to amplify them later on, but the fact that they're very soft also makes them that you can't really hear them. So the differences, because if I play the sound, we just hear party noise, and it's on both channels. So even if I would mute one of the channels, you can see the channels look very identical. There's really no difference that you can see here. So it means that it is impossible by just listening to it to do it. And so we need to do what I just mentioned, that we need to split and separate the channels. So we do that here by say split the channels to mono. Even if I mute one and the coordinates will be somewhere around here and I listen to it, we can't hear anything, right? We can't hear anything about the coordinates. However, they are there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the channels. So I'm going to take the chop channel here and I'm going to choose the invert. Now, you see that it will change a little bit, so there's a little bit of an inversion going on. So there is some changes, but even if I listen now to this channel, it still sounds very similar like the original. It's only when we start playing them together, so I will select both of them. So I'm holding the shift to select both of them. And now tell it to remix it again and put it into a new track. And we now see that the new track almost looks like mostly silent with a tiny little bit of audio in here. Well, let's enhance this audio with the same technique we did before. We'll amplify it and now we'll see big audio, right? Something that we can hopefully understand. So let's just play this part.
North 55 211 East 1424 544.
And voila, we have coordinates again. So even though the original file there was barely anything to see, oh, really nothing to see, there were coordinates hidden in there. By separating the channels, inverting one, and then merging them back together and looking at the output. So we've seen some pretty cool techniques, but there's still more. So some way to visualize music is something called a spectrogram. A spectrogram allows you to visualize it. It's kind of like a heat map of which frequencies are used in a certain area. So you see the frequency mapped out one way and then over time the other way. And it creates kind of like a heat map of what the sound is that you're hearing. So very cool image, and you see this sometimes in, like, if you go to a bar, you may see something that will display this, like the little bars that go up and down. However, you can control this the other way around, because if this is an image, we can feed it exactly the image that will show us actually a image. And it's very possible. There's tools that will help you do that, but it will always sound like kind of like a white noise, because it literally is now playing an image. So that is one way to recognize that maybe the spectrogram is something to take a look at. Audacity can do that, so let's take a look. And here we see what an audio file looks like that has a spectrogram hidden in it. If we listen to it, it sounds like absolute garbage, right? It's just white noise. Also, we see a very clear distinction between left and right. So it might have been that it's just hidden in the left or the right channel. But in this case, that is not the case. Because if we go to the view, we can actually go to the spectrogram and see what we see here. Very cleanly, we see coordinates written out. So this is in both channels in this case, so it doesn't necessarily have to do that. That's kind of how I encoded it. But you can see very nicely now what is going on, and now we have shown coordinates hidden in the audio file. That looked quite impressive, right? But we're not there yet. Another way to make audio visible is so-called an oscilloscope. Oscilloscope you might recognize from these old machines that would show like the wavelength of a certain tone that you would hear. And they could even show it as a vector. As long as it was a single line drawing, it could show what the frequency looked like, and it could even draw like a little image like this to kind of indicate what the sound is that you're hearing. Well, of course, we can also reverse engineer that. If I can use a single line to draw something, well, anything that I can draw a line, I can now make visual. Note that this is typically a single tone, so again, very recognizable. If you hear single tones, maybe shortly after each other, then there might be some kind of image shown. So let's take a look at that as well. So here, another audio file, using the web version in this case. Let's play it. It's almost like Morse code, right? But in this case, every tone is just played for a few seconds. You can actually control how long it is played when you're making a file like this. So the length has nothing to do with it. Of course, the length could be the coordinate, right? I mean, I could 5 seconds, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I can easily make numbers out of this, right? So just another way of using audio files. But in this case, there's nothing in the metadata, there is nothing in reversing it. What we have to use is this oscilloscope technique that I talked about. Now, this is one of the things that Audacity can't do as far as I'm aware. So I used here another website. There's actually probably 4 or 5. You can also download some tools. And I uploaded the same file. So let's play it right now and see what we see. So we see very clearly, we saw like the numbers appear, right? Each 1 second long, the length of the tone. And so, yeah, this is with an oscilloscope. We can actually visualize it. We could actually use the actual hardware device, and the hardware device would show the same coordinates if we played it. So yet another way to solving and hiding coordinates with audio files. So if you thought that that was fun and interesting, and maybe you learned something today, then please like the video. That way I can see you enjoyed it, and I appreciate that. But this time also a little bit of homework. So I kept using the same coordinate. Typically do that for every video. So in this case, the coordinate is in Europe somewhere. You can go watch it on Google Maps. And my question to you is, what is so special about this coordinate? There's something interesting, unique about this particular coordinate. So not the area around, not just this coordinate. It has something unique about it that is happening at this coordinate. So take a look, see if you can figure it out. Message me maybe on the geocaching.com website and tell me what you found and why you think of it, and I'm happy to respond. Also, if you want to look at the techniques and maybe want to practice it a little bit, I have a puzzle that uses all the techniques that were discussed here. So go solve it. See if you can get the checker to green. I showed you the tools that you can use. There's nothing there that we haven't shown here. And see if you can solve it. It uses several different techniques, kind of like the farmer says, but instead of animal sounds, you now have sounds with a puzzle in it. So go ahead and do that, and see if you can use your new skills in practice. So with that, reach the end of this episode. Again, yeah, please like it if you enjoyed it. You can also subscribe. I publish quite frequently. I've already have some next ideas in mind, and there are going to be some special episodes again. So yeah, subscribe to stay in touch and make sure you get notified. You can also leave me a comment on YouTube, or you can contact me, as I mentioned before. I'm Waterfan on the geocaching.com website, or you can email me at geocacher.waterfan5@gmail.com. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I appreciate you listening.